Good morning, students. This is Dr. Angela, and I am here to teach you on psychological competencies, right? So yesterday we had covered a couple of units about understanding what psychological competencies is all about, and what is psychological competencies, definition of it, and how it can be useful, and also personality, the meaning of personality, and how different people are different personalities, and the characteristics of the personalities of different people. And then we moved on to the unit 3, that is the life skills, right? So in the life skills, we try to talk about what is life skills, uh, why we need life skills, what are the components of life skills, and what are the broadly categorization of these skills into 3 components. That is the cognitive thinking skills, the social interpersonal skills, the emotional skills. The 3 broad categories have consisting of this following. That is the critical thinking, creative thinking, problem solving, decision making, and self-esteem, which comes as a part of the cognitive or thinking skills. And then we have communication skills, assertive skills, and cooperation skills, empathy, in terms when we are talking about social and interpersonal skills. And then we have the emotional skills, that is managing emotions and managing stress, etc. Then we also moved on to understanding what are the significance of life skills. And then we spoke about how the National Curriculum Framework 2005, speaks about how important is the life skill, because the knowledge needs to be connected to the life outside the school. Just having knowledge and not having the practical aspects of utilizing the knowledge, integrating the knowledge into the life skill is so important. Then we move to the issues that are existence in the Indian scenario. What are the issues now that we are currently facing in India is a rapid industrialization and globalization, right? You see, in the name of development, there's so much of migration that is happening, so much of technological development that is happening, so much the urban population is getting overpopulated, right? And these are all impact of globalization, right? And the target for the international market, the international market that has seeped into our country, and then how most of our traditional people who are into different kinds of occupations have been disappearing, and a lot of it has been absorbed in by the big industries, that is the big malls, that is again the big international market, and the huge population and economy not keeping space, poor infrastructure for welfare, law and order, and then transition in families, that is the from the traditional joint families to moving towards the nuclear family systems. And then the academic and the career stress, the kind of stress that the students, the children go through in schools and colleges, right, and in higher education, which is relating to academic steps. And then parents no longer as a role model, because there is so much of information bombardment that more than the parents, there are so many other people who are giving them the information. So the role model also is changing. Separation and exploitation of adolescent girls, the gender issues, right? How girls are becoming more and more vulnerable, and how gender is one of the major issue now at the moment, right? Which needs, that girl children need to be empowered. What are some of the problems among the youth, right? There is violence, there is domestic, labor, sexual, communal, religious, political, accidents, riots, and suicide. And then there is abuse, different forms of abuse. There is drugs, physical, domestic, tobacco, alcohol, HIV and AIDS. And then early social sexual experimentation, teenage marriages, high-risk behaviors, drug use, and domestic violence. Right? So there is also changes in the outlook, right? In terms of the way the money is being looked at, power, pressure to perform, pleasure seeking at any cost, prompt results, persons more important, a person more important than people. The national curriculum framework emphasize that education must prepare students to face all these issues and challenges of life. Hence, that is the reason life skill education plays a key role in the growing years, right? So key life skills include, what are the key life skills? The key life skills are psychosocial competencies, interpersonal skills that help people make informed decisions, solve problems, think critically and creatively, communicate effectively, building healthy relationships, empathizing with others, and coping with and managing in lives in a healthy and productive manner. Essentially, we speak about two kinds of skills. Those are related to thinking, termed as the thinking skills, and the skills related to dealing with others, termed as social skills. While thinking skills relate to reflection at personal level, social skills include interpersonal skills and do not necessarily depend on logical thinking. It is a combination of these two types of skills that is needed for achieving assertive behavior and negotiating effectively. Emotional can be perceived as a skill not only in making rational decisions, but also in bridge in being able to make others agree to case one's point of view. To do that, coming to terms first with oneself is important. Thus, self-management is an important skill, including managing with feelings, that is coping with emotions and stress and resisting fear and family pressure. And young people as advocates need both thinking and social skills for consensus building and advocacy on issues of concerns. Individuals develop ability to reduce specific risk behaviors, right? The person is less likely to resort to antisocial or high risk behavior. Person develops healthy behaviors, reduces risky behaviors that leads to long lasting healthy and social consequences. Studies on life skills trainings indicate that life skills promote positive and social interaction. Yeah, just changing the position because there's too much of light. Yeah. Just a moment. Yes. So what is the, okay, so every individual develops ability to reduce specific risk behavior. Yeah. So what is the importance? What is the importance of effective life skills, right? The importance of effective life skills are, it helps us to develop behavior that enables one to deal effectively with the demands and challenges in life, in self, others, and the environment. It also helps a person to reduce psychosocial distress and symptoms like depression and anxiety. Life skill also helps a person to avoid manipulation or exploitation by others, right? By others in his life or her life. Life skill also creates awareness to view things from internal locus of evaluation. It empowers an individual to take initiative and control of his or her life. Life skill also promotes mental health and self esteem. It helps in proper interaction with others in one's life. It helps a person to rise above emotional impasse that arises from daily conflicts, entangled relationships, peer pressure. The individuals develop ability to reduce specific risk behaviors. The person is less likely to resort to antisocial or high risk behavior. With the life skill, the person develops a healthy behavior and reduces risky behaviors that can keep long lasting healthy and social consequences. Studies on life skill training indicate that life skills promote positive social interaction between the peers. It enhances communication skills. It also enhances negotiation skills. It helps the young people to learn how to negotiate, right? Enhances problem-solving skills, enhances self-awareness, and reduces a lot of negative emotions like anger, anxiety, depression, and also enhances the decision-making process. Okay, now let's see what is life skill and the personality development, in what ways they are linked. Now, life skills are the abilities or the techniques that help individual to promote his or her mental well-being and competence as she faces the realities of life. Proper application of life skill techniques enables a person to develop enough control over his or emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, which is very important, right? Because that is our inner world. How do we deal with our thoughts, emotions, and behavior is very important. And thus, it helps one to make informed decision, makes choices that leads to positive behavior. And personal development is a personal maturation psychology. It focuses on the person or a self in relation to what is known, what is hidden, what is blind, and what is unknown. If you remember the Johari window, we speak about all these things, right? So it is a process of improving oneself through life skills, applying them in our life's activities to enhance personal life, work, and professionalism. It also increases our consciousness and builds our lives positively. Personal development is a framework when one works towards personal positive change and involves measuring whether the changes are taking place. Change is geared towards a positive. It consists of individuals setting goals or benchmarks and the strategies or plans that are laid down in a plan to reach the set goals. Communication and feedback and denied path are tools that enable the individual to reach his or her goal. So, what is the relationship between life skills and individual personality development? Now, life skills are the abilities for adapting the positive behavior that enable individuals to deal effectively with the demands and challenges of everyday life. Our ability to cope, how well we are prepared to deal with the counterbalance everyday demands and keep equilibrium in our lives. Now, these life skills can be learned and even improved upon, like assertive time management, rational thinking, improving relationship, self-care, and overcoming unhelpful habits such as perfectionism, procrastination, etc. are some of the life skills that will help us to meet the challenges of life. Now, life skills are essentially those abilities that helps us to promote physical, mental, emotional well-being and competencies to face the realities of life. The World Health Organization, that is the WHO, listed 10 core life skills, which addresses the core communication and self-organization skills that make it possible for individuals to consider their own personality development. If you can look into your books, you will find very beautifully the 10 core life skills are given, right? Which is laid down by the WHO. Let us look at each one and understand what are they, right? The first one is self-awareness, right? What is self-awareness? It's a recognition of ourselves, our character, our strengths, our weaknesses, our desires, and likes. Now, developing self-awareness can help us to recognize when we are stressed out or feel under pressure. It is a prerequisite for effective communication and interpersonal relationship, as well as development for empathy with others. So, self-awareness is something that is very important. We need to understand, we need to have certain amount of self-awareness about what is happening inside, what are we thinking, what are our thought processes, right? Because they will help us in dealing not only just with who we are as person in understanding, but also help us to deal with the other person. That is the first life skill. The second one is empathy, right? What is empathy? To have a successful relationship with the others or society at large, we need to we need to care, understand and care about other people's needs, desires, and feeling. Okay. So empathy is the ability to imagine what life is like for another person, right? So there's a lot of difference between empathy and sympathy. Empathy and sympathy are not the same. Sympathy is something that I feel sorry, something that I pity about, right? If I look at a beggar, maybe I will feel sympathy, right? I'll feel pity and I may throw a few points. But empathy is very different. Empathy is I feel with you, your feelings. I understand your feelings. I try to put myself in your shoes and see what it means to feel the pain that you are feeling, right? So that is what is empathy all about. It is a very important prerequisite when we are interacting, especially with others, so that when we understand other people's needs, when we understand their problems, we will be able to better relate to them and better interact with them. Okay, so that is the number 2 skill, life skill. The third one is the critical thinking. Now, what is critical thinking? It is the ability to analyze information and experience in an objective manner. See, most of the time our minds are judgmental, right? So whatever our expressions are, it is very subjective, right? I can talk about my subjective feeling, my subjective thought process, right? But critical thinking is something different. It makes me look in a not a subjective manner, not from the lens that I have gained, but it helps me to look in a very objective manner, because critical thinking contribute to health by helping us recognize and assess the factors that influence attitude and behaviors, such as values, peer pressure, and needs. Okay, so that is all about critical thinking. Number 4, the fourth life skill is creative thinking. What is creative thinking? It is a novel way of seeing or doing things that characterizes these 4 components. That is the fluency, generating new ideas. Right? We get so used to doing the same things again and again because we are creatures of habit. So we don't really try to see something in a new light. We don't use our creativity to see something, to do things in a new way, to find new way of looking at problems or inventing solutions. Okay, so which requires that we generate a lot of new ideas from within. We talk to a lot of people. We become very flexible in shifting our perspectives. Instead of only thinking what I see is right, this is what I know, this is what I learn. No, I am able to listen to other people's thought processes. I'm able to listen to others, see their perspective, right? Originality, conceiving something new, and building on the other's idea. So creativity is all about bringing out something new that was not there before to be able to, solve my problems, right? So number 5 comes the life skill. Number 5 is decision making. Right? What is decision making? Decision making is all about how we are able to make decision actively, right? By understanding all the above factors, right? By using all the above skills like self-awareness, creative thinking, creativity, critical thinking. We are able to understand, to certain extent, empathy, all that. And in that process, we are able to make a healthy assessment, right? We are able to make the right decision. So number 6 life skill is the problem solving. What is problem solving? Problem solving is nothing to be able to deal with the problem in a constructive manner, right? There will be a lot of problems that could be unresolved, which can cause us mental stress, which can give us mental strain, right? But when we are able to use the life skill of self-awareness, when we are able to use the life skill of critical thinking, creative aspect, right? And when you're able to look at these old problems in a newer way, shifting our perspectives, analyzing it, generating new ideas, right? We are able to solve the problem. So problem solving also is a very important skill, life skill education. Okay. And number 7 life skill is a interpersonal relationship. Now, what is this interpersonal relationship? This skills helps us to relate. It is a skill that will help us to relate with other people in a positive manner. It will help us to keep, friendly relationships, right? Which can be of greater importance to our mental and social well-being, right? So good relations with family members, good relations with friends, the social support that we get is all very important because that will also help us to feel good about our own selves. Number 8 comes effective communication, right? So what is effective communication? What is communication? We'll read it a little more detail as we move along. But for now, we understand that we communicate in 2 different ways. That is verbally and non-verbally. Now, what is this verbal communication? Verbal communication is when I use words to communicate to you my thoughts and feelings. And non-verbal is when I use gestures, when I use hand movements, facial expressions, all this will come in the non-verbal, okay, which are appropriate to certain cultures and situations. Okay, so communication, effective communication is important in building good relationships. It is important in building the right relationships. It is important in having also a good mental health to stay positive. Number 9, life skill is coping with stress, which means recognizing the source of stress in our life, right? It is very important. We may be stressed with so many things, but we need to be aware so that we are able to better cope. If we don't even know the causes for the stress, if we are not even able to recognize our stress, it becomes a challenge for us. So coping with stress means recognizing the sources of stress in our lives and how it affects us and acting in ways that helps us to control our levels of stress by changing our environment or changing our lifestyle and learning how to relax. Okay, so that is on the number 9. Number 10 is coping with emotions, right? Which means involving recognizing emotions within us and others, being aware of how emotions influence our behavior and being able to respond to emotions in an appropriate manner. Okay, it is also called, we need to understand and learn how to regulate these emotions, right? As young people, we are wide varied of emotions actually. So instead of being very reactive, impulsive, we learn to regulate these emotions so that we are able to understand not just ourselves, but also take care of our mental health and also our relationship with others. Okay. So life skill, now when you look at all these 10 life skills, you see each of it is interrelated, right? One is interrelated to another. All the 10 life skills are very important for us, beginning from self-awareness, like creative thinking, critical thinking, problem solving, coping with emotions, developing empathy, problem solving. These are all interrelated, okay? Because when they are interrelated, they become responsible for a psychosocial competence, right? Therein where our self-esteem are built. We will gain better self-esteem, self-efficacy, and we move towards a holistic development of our personalities. Now, life skill helps an individual also in the following ways. Okay, in our books, they are given some 9 points. So you can read up those, right? Which is very simple. It helps behavior to deal with the demands and challenges of life. As we know, life is tough. Life is going to be difficult. And we need to have these life skills to be able to cope with the life situations, the challenges of life with ourselves and others and the environment. Life skill also helps us reduce psychological distress and symptoms, especially if we are prone for anxiety and depression. Having good life skills, integrated in our life and our system will help us to deal with anxiety, depression, and the other forms of mental illnesses, right? Which we can be impacted by. Life skill also helps us to avoid manipulation and exploitation by others, right? It creates awareness to view things from internal focus of evaluation. That means we start looking from within, right? So our focus of control is internal. It empowers an individual to take initiative and control over his or her life. Life skill also promote health, mental health, and self-esteem. It helps in proper interaction with others in one's life. It helps avoid emotional impasses that arises in daily life and entangled relationships and peer pressure. It helps reduce specific risk behaviors, like the person is less likely to resort in antisocial or high risk behavior, and the person will develop healthy behaviors. Okay, so it reduces rescue behaviors that leads to long-lasting healthy and social consequences. Studies on life skill training indicates that life skills promote positive social interactions. Okay, so with this, we come to the next relationship pattern. Okay, what is this? In an ideal world, we would all born with perfectly attuned parents who loves us truly and are there for us whenever we need them. But we also give just the right amount of space and independence to flourish and fully develop our unique selves. Parents should provide a solid base from which you would venture out as separate individuals. They make us feel safe, seen, and soothed, and therefore secure. Dr. Ektronik, an assistant professor of pediatrics at Harvard University, has found in his research that even the best parents, that ones who form secure relationship with kids, only get it right about 30% of the time. The way we experience relationship in our very early lives create an internal working model for how we review relationships throughout our life. In other words, our past relationship affect everything about who we choose as partners or how we are likely to interact with them and what behavior we elicit from them. Our early relationships provide a template for our relationships. Can I depend on others? Why they suit me when I need it? Will they see for who I really am? Relationship patterns are repeating the same behavior over and over again with new people in our lives. So no matter how we keep progressing in life, if we develop a pattern in a relationship, we have a tendency to keep repeating in all the patterns. So what types of partner we choose at different points in life, where we usually meet these partners, and how the relationship progresses. While each relationship is different in many ways, it is important to recognize that we are the common factor among all our relationships, right? So our relationship pattern dictates three basic things. One is who we pick. That's the kind of person we get into the relationship with. Second, how we interact with them, the behavior we use with them during our relationship, and how we let them treat us, what we allow them to say and do with us while in the relationship. While exploring the idea of relationship patterns in the lab, it was realized that there are similarities across people. To make it easier to understand, it is broken down into 5 archetypes. Okay? So then let us look at those. The first one is a caregiver. We play into caregiver relationship pattern when we are always trying to fix, taking care, or improve the person we are with. This can happen when the other person wants it or not. For example, you really want to help your friend. You want to inspire them to get the right job. And you just keep picking friends who needs to take care of. You may see yourself as the savior for their problems. Over time, this can be exhausted. This can be exhausting and it can be one-sided, right? So if you are with friends and if you are always the person who takes care of others without them doing anything on their own, at the end of it, doing all the time, responding to the needs of your friends, you will get exhausted. You will get tired because you are the one who are always caring. And from the other side, you don't get it. If this is your pattern, no matter what relationships you get into, this pattern will get repeated in every relationship you come across. Okay. The next one is the alpha. What is the alpha? The alpha is the opposite pattern from the caregiver. This is when you want to be you want to be the one in charge. You dictate the rules and habits of the relationship. You like being in the relationship where you can be the chief decision maker. For example, you are the only one who are always choosing where to dine out, where to hang out, where to go out, and what to do. This can be good if you like to be in charge and the other person wants you to take and lead the social decision. But this can be bad if you don't listen to the other person's need, right? So it is nice that you take initiative. It is nice that you suggest. It is nice that you are taking the lead. But if you're not consulting others and if the others are not happy with the decisions that you are making, so this is not going to be good for the relationship. Okay. So this also can be repeated in the kind of people you choose in your life. The next is a parent. What is this kind of a pattern? This is when you feel as though you are a parenting your partner or a friend's group. You might accidentally be getting into a parent-child relationships. Sometimes this can happen with the eldest children who are used to taking on bigger role growing up as individuals with strong maternal or paternal instinct. For example, you are always the one coordinating and making sure that everyone is taken care. This role can be wonderful for a group if your mothering is appreciated. But if it can turn bad and if you're chastising or punishing your friends for bad behavior, right? So if you are playing the role of a parent, not all your friends may like, right? Because some may not want to be, not want you to guide them, not want you to, take so much responsibility, not want you to correct them, because they are already experiencing that with their parents. And now when they find a friend who acts like a parents, they are disappointed, and this is bad. Okay. And if you have this kind of a pattern, it gets repeated in relationships. Yeah. The next one is a codependent. What is codependent? This relationship pattern happens when you and your partner immediately become a unit, both giving up a lot of your individuality. This can be good if you are healthy support systems for each other, but it can be bad if you begin doing everything together. Stop having your own friends or activities are completely reliant on the other person for social, emotional, and psychological support. Okay. So if there are two friends and if they are codependent, they feel self-sufficient with one another. This is good because they are encouraging each other, they're nurturing each other, they're helping one another, they're depending on each other. But the disadvantage of being in this kind of a relationship is that it stops you from making friends from, more friends, because you just don't need only one relationship in your life, right? Only being codependent on one person is not enough. You need to have many more friends for you to grow, to learn, to understand perspectives, right? So it is very important that you don't become totally reliant on each other, but you will extend yourself in having more friends, going out for more different kind of activities, right? Where you can be emotionally and psychologically supported, also from the outside. The next one is a push-pull. Now, this type of pattern occurs when you have a very volatile relationship. Now, constant up and down, breakups and makeup, right? Then you might think it's a push and pull pattern in a relationship. For example, if you feel the relationship is perfect with your friend, but your friend needs some space, your friend tries to avoid you, which makes you cling you even harder, which makes your friend run up for hills. This is called the push-pull. You might always be the puller. Your friend needs space and she pulls away. Or you might always be the pusher, the one always pushing for more time, more intimacy, and faster connection. Or you might switch back and forth. Then the push-pull pattern. Your breakups can be rough. It can be hard to rely on these relationships. Okay, because they are so up and down. There is no consistency in this relationship. Okay. Now, apart from all these four relationship patterns, based on the attachment theory proposed by John will be a strong affectional bond between infants and their caregiver is known as attachment. It is the first form of love we experience towards others. Infants from strong attachment to the persons who care for them. Based on Bowlby's theory, the pattern of attachment is measured through a strange situation test, a procedure in which the caregiver leaves a child alone with the stranger for a few minutes and then returns. The quality of attachment, Bowlby contended, is revealed by how the infant behaves when the caregiver returns after a separation. Research using the strange situation tests have found that infants differs in the quality or the style of attachment to the caregiver. In fact, most show the following four distinct patterns or attachments. Right? Now, what are they? There are four different types. One is the secure attachment, a pattern of attachment in which infants actively seek contact with the caregiver and take comfort from her presence when she returns. Insecure and avoidant attachment. Now, what is this? This is a pattern of attachment in which infants don't cry when the caregiver leaves. When she returns, they avoid her or slow to greet her. And the third one is the insecure or ambivalent attachment, a pattern of attachment in which infant seeks contact with the caregiver before separation. But after she leaves and returns, they first seek her, but then resist or reject her or offer of comfort. The last one is a disorganized or disoriented attachment. This attachment is a pattern in which infants show contradictory reactions or reject her offer of comfort. Yeah, a pattern of which contradicted to the caregiver. A growing body of evidence indicates that the difference in the attachment style in infancy has strong effects on the kind of relationship individuals form when they are adults. During childhood, youngsters who are securely attached to the caregivers are more sociable, better at solving problems, better at certain kind of solving problems. They are more tolerant of frustration, more flexible and persistent in many situations and seek closeness in the adult relationship and are comfortable with having to depend on their partners. People who are insecurely or avoidantly attached to their caregivers as infants seem to worry constantly about losing their partners. They didn't trust their caregivers and they don't trust spouses or lovers when they are adults. Similarly, persons showed ambivalent attachment in infancy seem to be ambivalent even in romantic relationship too. They want them to, but they also fear them because they perceive their partners distant and unloved. In the sense, the patterns of our relationship with others is set at least to a degree by nature of the very first relationship we form, attachment to our caregiver. Okay, so this is all about the relationship patterns. You have summary, you can check your progress, there are model questions, right? There are glossaries. Please go through it. And with this, we end the block 1, right? So now we move on to the block 2, right? So what is in block 2? In block 2 again, we have 4 units. One is unit 4 that speaks about cognitive skill. And then we have the unit 5, which talks about the psychosocial skills. And then we have the unit 6 that speaks about self-management skill. Let us try and see if we can deal with this block 2 and then we see how we can understand each of it. So let's take the unit 4. Now, what is the objective of the unit 4? To describe the concept and the importance of cognitive skill, explain the nature of creative thinking, analyze the process and barriers to creative thinking, describe the basic principle and importance of critical thinking, and explain problem solving and decision making skills. Okay. Now, everyone desires to have a successful, healthy, purposeful, reasonable, and flexible living to deal with problems and ups and downs of life. But achieving this goal, at least many of us, if not possible to question, it can be answered by designing a deep matter named life skill. That's what we spoke in the before when you're talking about the life skill education. Yeah. So let us look at the life skills that can be categorized as core effective life skills and core cognitive life skills. Okay. Now, what are these core effective life skills? Core effective life skills consists of 4 life skills. Okay. Such as coping with stress, empathy, interpersonal relationship, and coping with emotions. Okay. Now, these 4 come under the core effective life skills. The next is the core cognitive life skills. Now, what is the core cognitive life skills? They are consisting of 6 core life skills, such as self-awareness, critical thinking, decision-making, effective communication, creative thinking, and problem solving. As we have seen those 10 life skills, which we have studied, which is important for our lives and our personality, that 10 now has been divided into this core part as effective life skill and effective and core cognitive skill. Now let us understand what is cognitive skills, right? Cognitive skills are also called as cognitive function, cognitive abilities or cognitive capacities. These are brain-based skills which are needed in acquisition of knowledge, manipulation of information, and reasoning. Cognition describes all the skills necessary for us to successfully function in everyday life. Cognition skills are involved in performing the tasks associated with perception, learning, memory, understanding, awareness, reasoning, judgment, intuition, and language. They are more to do with mechanisms of how people learn, remember, solve problems, pay attention, rather than with the actual knowledge. Okay. So they are given an example in your textbooks. You can go through it, like how all these things come into play, right? Like the perception, right? Like the decision making, like how the language skill, the motor skills, the social skills, the tone of voice, how everything coming together, right? Incoming info. The cognitive skills play a huge role in performing both big and complicated tasks as well as smaller and easier tasks such as reading. They are interrelated and might even overlap with each other. Okay, so just look at briefly, which you already know to a large extent, right? That is the memory and the long-term memory, right? What it does enables us to recall information stored in the past. Common problems when the skill is weak: forgetting names, doing poorly on stress, forgetting the things that we used to know before, right? And then we have memory working. What it does enables us to hold information while in the process of using. Like common problems when the skill is weak: having to read the directions again in the middle of the project, difficulty following multi-step directions, forgetting what was just said in the conversation. And then there is logic and reasoning. What it does enables us to reason out, form ideas, solve problems. Okay. And then we have deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning. It begins with a broad truth, right? A major premise, such as the statement that all men are mortal, right? And then it goes into, you know, begins from the broad truth, and then it narrows down to come to the actual understanding. Similarly, we have inductive reasoning, which is broad conclusions are drawn from specific observations. Data leads to conclusions. For example, having seen 10 white swans, we use conducting reasoning to conclude that all swans are white. Common problems when skill is weak: frequently asking, what do I next? Or saying, I don't get this, or struggling with math, feeling stuck or overwhelmed. And then we have the auditory processing. What it does helps us to analyze, blend, segment sounds. What is the problem here? Struggling with learning to read, write, fluency, right? And doing fluency or reading comprehension. Then we have visual processing. What it does enables us to think, visualize images, right? What are the common problems one can encounter, right? Remembering what you have read, following direction, reading maps, word maths problems. Processing speed, which enables us to perform tasks quickly, accurately. The common problem: most tasks are difficult, taking a long time to complete tasks at school or at work, frequently being the last one in the group to finish something. Attention, what it does enables us to stay focused. The common problem here is lots of unfinished project, jumping from one task to another, easily distracted, difficulty multitasking, and frequent mistakes. Now, each of these cognitive skills play an important role in processing new information. The level of each of our cognitive skill can vary, depending upon the extent to which a skill is practiced, learning methods, ways to remember, and the way we interpret stimuli to affect the level of each skill. Now, importance of cognitive skill. Why do you think cognitive skills are important? Because it can help us strong performer at work when we focus on developing and improving them. Employees hiring for roles require strength in certain cognitive skill, but ensure the candidates are capable of before extending the job offer. Okay. At work, day-to-day life situation, leading to meeting for bosses, completing sale transaction at the grocery, or cleaning up the house. If searching for jobs, understanding abilities might help us to identify career or organization that will align to our strengths. If already professionals for several years, it helps us to assess our current skill and look for areas of improvement. Okay? So many studies over decades have shown cognitive skills are determining factor of an individual's learning ability. According to the Oxford Learning.com, the skills that separate the good learners from the so-so learners is, in the essence, when cognitive skills are strong, learning is fast and easy. When cognitive skills are weak, learning becomes a challenge. From physical activity to sleep, we can improve our cognitive skills in many ways. Books, puzzles, walks, stress reducer are certainly enhance our learning ability and strengthen cognitive skills to succeed in endeavors of life. Okay, so these are all about the cognitive. Creative thinking. What is it? Distinguished from other types of thinking by the fact it involves in the production of novels, original ideas, or solution to problems. Sometimes creating thinking is understood just as the new way of thinking or thinking differently. It is a mental process involving the generation of new ideas or concepts or new association between existing ideas or concepts. Creative thinking thus refers to originality, uniqueness of these ideas or solution that did not previously exist. Okay. So some of the characteristics, right, process of doing this creative thinking is, right, we look at the different kinds of thinking that needs to be done. Researchers tend to agree that thinking is said to be creative when it is reality oriented, when it is appropriate, constructive, and socially agreeable. Okay, so let us look at the types of thinking. Right? There is convergent thinking and then there is divergent thinking. Yeah, Guilford, a pioneer in creative research, proposed two types of thinking. Now, convergent thinking refers to thinking that is required to solve problems which have only one correct answer. The mind converges the solutions, right? Which is very easy. Suppose in your mind, if you are thinking of multiples of 2 or multiples of 3, so 2, 4, 6, 8, and the next one, very easy. The mind converges immediately. The answer is 10. Similarly, you say 3, 6, 9, and the next answer will be 12, and the mind converges that. Okay, and divergent thinking refers to which open-ended thinking where individuals think from different answers to the question's problem in terms of his or her experiences. For example, what are the various uses of cloth? What will happen if examinations are abolished in schools? If you look at these two questions and when you try to answer, you can't use the convergent type of thinking. Your thinking will become divergent because you're thinking from diverse situations. Okay, you generate answers in different ways, right? Because your answer needs to be in a very broad way about what are the uses of cloth and how examinations in school needs to be abolished and stuff like that. Okay, so fluency is the ability to produce many ideas for a given task. Flexibility indicates a variety of thinking. Originality, the ability to provide rare and unusual seeing of new relationships, combining old ideas with new. And elaboration is the ability to enable person to go with details and work on implication of the new ideas. Now, divergent thinking is important in creative thinking process because it generates a whole range of original ideas that forms the basis of creative thinking. What is the process? There are different processes here, right, which is very simple to understand. There are stages and the new ideas come. One is the preparation, like how one person tries to prepare. Divergent thinking helps you to prepare, right? And then incubation, where you incubate that, right? It is there lying inside, right? Where you are thinking from all different unusual perspectives so that they may not be getting a feeling of getting stuck, right? And then comes the insight. When suddenly out of thinking for a longer period of time, incubating that in your mind, preparing that particular, thinking about that particular solution, incubating, suddenly you'll start developing insights which will be new. It can happen sometimes when you're sleeping, when you're waking up, when you're bathing, or just walking around. It is a aha moment, a moment where there is a shift in your perception, a shift in your paradigm. The solution occurs. Then comes the evaluation, deciding if the insight is valuable and worth pursuing. The barriers to this creative thinking are habitual. That is, we are into the habit of particular ways of thinking. Okay, perceptual, the habit of thinking, perceiving in a familiar ways, right, where no originality can come. Emotions like fear of failure, rejection, all this can also hinder. And cultural, excessive adherence to traditions, expectations, conformity, stereotypes also can block. How do you enhance our creative thinking? We become more aware and sensitive in order to notice and respond to the feelings of sight, sounds, and textures, right? We generate maximum amount of ideas and solutions to a given task in order to increase the flow of thoughts so that we can choose the best. And then we use the brainstorming method, right? We experience a practice leads to independent thinking, engaging in activities that require use of imagination and original thinking, getting feedback on proposed solution, thinking solutions that others may offer, giving the ideas a chance to incubate, resisting the tendency to get immediate rewards, being self-confident, positive, aware of all the differences, then the problem. Yeah, so all this can, help us, to be a creative thinker, which can enhance our thinking. The next one is a critical thinking. What is critical thinking? It means reason with judgment. Reason people's judgment, which are logical and well thought out, right? So, what are the basic principles of this critical thinking? There are 4 basic principles of critical thinking, according to Gill. Now, what are they? There are very few truths that do not need to be subjected to testing. Although people accept religious beliefs and personal values on faith, everything else need to have supporting evidences, right? Questions can be investigated empirically, should be examined using Establish scientific methods. One shouldn't accept anything at the face value, but should always ask, how do you know and what is the evidence? So that is one principle. The second principle is all evidence is not equal in quality. So people need to look at how evidence is gathered before deciding that it provides good support to the idea. And number three is just because someone is considered to be an authority or have a lot of expertise doesn't make anything that person claim automatically true. One should always ask to see the evidence rather than just take the expert opinion. How good is the evidence? Are there alternative explanation? And then critical thinking requires an open mind, right? It's good to have an open mind, but not so open and gullible to have swallow everything. Critical thinking requires delicate balance between skepticism and willingness to consider possibilities, right? Essential Skills by Barry A. Baker in his book Critical Thinking summarizes the essential skills required for critical thinking. One is the distinguish between variable facts, claims of value, distinguishing relevant data from irrelevant information, determine whether statement is factually correct, identifying whether source is credible, spotting ambiguous claims or argument, identifying assumptions which are not stated explicitly, detecting bias, identifying logical inconsistency, recognizing errors in the line of reasoning, assessing the strengths of argument. Okay, so these are all related to critical thinking. Next, we move on to problem solving. Right, we keep facing problems in everyday lives, right, and it is very important that we learn how to solve the problems, what are the steps that is required in solving problems, and what are the methods that we can use to solve problems, and what are the obstacles in problem solving methods, right? So when you look at the steps in problem, we need to first and foremost identify what the problem is. It is called problem identification. If you do not even know how to identify the problem, it is a big, it becomes a challenge, right, to sort the problem out. Secondly, formulate potential solutions, right? So you think about different probable solutions to this problem, right? So you formulate that. And the third, you evaluate each of the alternative that you have just proposed or suggested. And the fourth one is try the potential solution, which you think might be suitable for solving this problem. So these are the four simple steps that one can follow. Now, what are the methods for problem solving? The first one is trial and error. Okay, what is trial and error? It's a method that you try. If you succeed, you succeed. If you don't, you can try again, right? It's a trial and error. You are not sure. The second one is the algorithms. What is this algorithms? It's a rules that guarantee the solution to a specific type of problem, right? If we follow rules correctly, we will solve the problem. So if we have the correct scientific method, right, algorithms, we will be able to. Heuristics. These are the thumbs we often use to guide our cognitions. Heuristics involve strategies suggested by prior experienced ones. We have found this useful in the past. This may or may not work in the present, or so solution is not guaranteed. But we look at in terms of certainty, they gain in efficiency. Okay, so means an analysis, sub goal. Okay, analogy. We sometimes attempt to solve problems through use of analogy. It's a strategy for solving problems based on applying solutions that were previously successful with the problem similar to the underlying structure. What are the obstacles? Okay, there are some three obstacles. One is the mental set, right? If the mental set tendency of a person to solve problem is already in operation steps, it becomes very difficult to solve the problem. It hinders actually the mental set. The functional fixedness, like mental set, functional fixedness is the problems when people fail to solve problem because they are fixed in one thing or usual function. And the third one is a lack of motivation. If you do not have the motivation, it is very difficult, right? So next we move on to decision making, right? So we already have some idea about what decision making is all about because we learned it in the previous life skill, one of the important life skill, education, right? The utility or value, the outcome of each alternative might yield the probability that such results would actually occur. As you know from our own life, people don't usually reason in such systematic manner. Instead, make decisions informally on the basis of hunches, intuition, information stored in memories and opinions of others. Okay, what are the factors that influence decision making, right? So using the quick fallible rules of the thumb to make decision, right? Availability heuristic is the tendency to make judgments about frequency or likelihood of events in terms of how readily examples can be brought to mind. The second one is a representativeness, assuming what's typical is also likely, right? It's a mental rule of thumb suggesting that the more closely an event or object resembles typical example of some concept or category, the more likely it is belong to the concept or category. Third is anchoring and adjustment reference points that may lead us to, right? So this is, remember the first time you went alone for shopping, you stopped and admired a piece of cloth, let the shopkeeper debate outrageous price, bargain. It may seem reasonable strategy till you find out the next step that the shopkeeper quotes your price is just paid and his willingness to negotiate. Then you might conclude that the best strategy is to walk around and check out on the prices. The fourth one is anchoring and adjustment heuristics. It's a cognitive rule of thumb for making decisions in which existing information is accepted as a reference point, but then adjusted usually in the light of various factors. Okay. Escalation of commitment. The tendency to become trapped in bad decision is known as a escalation of commitment, which helps explain why many investors hold on to what clearly bad investments and why they remain in troubled marriages or relationship. Okay, escalation of commitment, why does it occur? Rational factors, people choose particular course of action because they believe these yield favorable outcomes. Okay, psychological factors, because persons responsible for initial decision may realize that if they back away from or reverse it, they will be admitting that they made a mistake. Indeed, negative results increase as individuals may experience or growing need for self-justification, a tendency to justify both the previous judgments and the losses already endured. Significance of decision making. However well we prepare children with skills and knowledge, they will be entering into uncertain world. Opportunities are constantly evolving, and our one door closes, another may open. Consequently, ability to make effective decisions that may remain happy, which can directly impact their happiness both today and long into adulthood. Learning how to make good decisions is essential for life skills, not just achieving outward success, but in order to secure a lasting of some personal fulfillment. So we end here this cognitive skills for the vehicles of decision-making skills, right? You have checked your progress, look at the glossaries, right? Questions, try and answer these questions. And the material that is given is very easily readable. So we move on to the next, that is the psychosocial skills, which is the unit number 5. Right? What is the objective? Know the importance of psychosocial skill, understand the importance of communication, understand what is self-awareness, develop an understanding of interpersonal relationship, and understand what is empathy. So when we talk about the psychosocial skills, we will be covering all these aspects, right? In a way that can help us to integrate those life skills in our lives. Okay. So just an introduction before we close so that we continue in the next class. Right? Psycho refers to the psyche or the spirit of person. This includes the inner entity of emotion, thoughts, desires, beliefs, and values, as well as in which they perceive ourselves. Social refers to the relationships and surrounding of individual. This consists of both material world, social and cultural context in which people live. Psychosocial thus consists of an individual's well-being linked to his or her environment. Psychosocial skills support is considered to be important component of high-quality interventions designed positively to impact the well-being of the individual. Okay. Worldwide, in 21st century, life is undergoing significant changes. Technological advancements have been made the world a global village. Technology has made education and training necessary. Psychosocial skills are the instrument to deal with various demands like being motivated, need for self-discipline, dealing with health issues, being connected and interdependent, yet mature, expressing oneself clearly but politely, cooperating and with peers. Okay, psychosocial skills enables a person to say no when needed, to say no, and communication, politely saying no when needed, resolving conflicts without breaking relationships, being socially responsible, coping with stress. Communication, interpersonal relationship, and empathy are the most important psychosocial skills. Psychosocial skills, when exercised by adolescent youth, appropriately ensures living in harmony with family, friends, and also the culture. Psychosocial competence is a person's ability to deal with effectively with the demands and challenges of everyday life. It is a person's ability to maintain a state of mental well-being and demonstrate this in an adaptive and positive behavior while interacting with others, his or her cultural and environment. Psychosocial skills have an important role to play in the promotion of health in its broadest sense, which includes physical, mental, and social well-being. In this unit, we'll discover the four factors: communication, self-awareness, interpersonal skills, and empathy as the parts of the psychosocial skill. Okay, so I stop here today, right? So we will continue the next part of it, the psychosocial skill, in our next class. But meanwhile, just keep reading. It's very simple language that is being used, right? Read up the whole textbook, read up the questions, the glossaries if you're not able to understand. And if there is anything that you want to clarify, you can write it down. And please attend the classes. I would be happy to see students responding, asking me questions. And it will be my pleasure, and I'll be glad to respond to your queries. Yeah. So with this, I close the session. Thank you very much, and may God bless you. Have a great weekend.